Sales are down across Winnipeg, but prices are still holding and even rising in some areas. So what's actually going on in the market right now? In this March 2026 update, I'm going to break down what's happening with sales, prices, inventory, and where things are starting to shift depending on location and price range. Because the reality is, this isn't just one market right now. Different price points in different areas are behaving much differently. And that's what's creating opportunities for some people and frustrations for others. Let's walk through what's actually happening, what it means if you're thinking about buying or selling, moving up or downsizing. In March, we saw 1,135 total MLS sales, which is down about 4% compared to March of last year, and slightly below the 5-year average as well. All MLS, meaning all property types like condos, residential, attached, detached, and vacant lands. At the same time, active listings came in about 2,800, also down year over year, showing that overall inventory is still tighter than what we've typically seen. This tells us that sales activity is slightly lower, prices are still holding, and eventually trending upward. That usually points to a market where supply is still limited enough to support pricing, even with fewer transactions happening. Hey, I'm Justin Zinkowski with Royal LePage Prime Real Estate. Thinking about selling can feel overwhelming. Knowing where your home stands in today's market is usually the first question that comes up. If you'd like to talk through what buyers are paying right now and what that can mean for your house, just click the link in the description to set up a quick conversation. It's simple, no pressure, and give you some clarity on deciding on your next move. For residential detached home sales, there were 722, which is down about 6.6% compared to last year, also below the 5-year average. Active listings came in at 1,120, continuing the trend of lower inventory year over year. The average price increased to 474,000, up about 1% from last year and up over 8% from the 5-year average. So similar to the overall market, we're seeing fewer sales, but prices continuing to climb. That typically tells us there's still strong demand in the detached segment, even with lower transaction volume. Looking at the year-to-date sales, there were 1,578 so far, which is down about 10.5% compared to last year. New listings are also down about 2,500, which is roughly 9.5% over the 5-year average. With the average price year to date of about 458,000, up about 1.5% and nearly 8% from the 5-year average. March, about 48% of the homes sold over asking price, while roughly 44% sold under list, and then around 7% sold right at list price. So we're still seeing a fairly competitive environment with almost half homes selling over ask. And if we look at the absorption rate, we're about 2.5 months of inventory, which means if no new homes came to market, it would take about 2.5 months to sell everything that's currently available. So overall, conditions are still favoring sellers, not as aggressively as we've seen in peak markets. More of the competition, but slightly stabilizing environment. In March, there were 722 detached home sales. When you break it down by price range, you start to see where the real activity is happening. The most activity is happening between 350,000 to the 400,000 with 97 sales, making it one of the biggest single segments of the market. Right behind it, we saw the 400 to 450 with 77 sales, 450 to 500 with 76 sales, and the 500 to 550 with 71 sales. So that 350 to 550 range is really the core of the market right now. And on the more affordable side, there were 85 sales under 250,000. As you move up, activity starts to thin out. There was only 14 sales over $1 million. Those homes are averaging about 39 days on market. Most buyers are concentrated in that mid-range price point. And that's where you're seeing the strongest competition activity right now. When you look at inventory, two biggest segments right now are the 250 to 500 with about 389 active listings, and then the 500 to 750 range with about 361 listings. So combined, that's about 2/3 of all active listings, sitting between 250 and 750,000. Most inventory is concentrated right in that mid-price range, and that's where buyers have the most options to choose from right now. Low 250 inventory drops off quite a bit, and then once you get over 750,000, listings start to thin out again as well. So the market isn't spread out evenly. It's heavily centered in that mid-range. And when we look at where activity is happening, this is where it really reinforces the idea that all markets are local. Inside Winnipeg, the average price came in at just over 481,000, which is up about 1% compared to last year. And at the same time, sales are slightly down by about 3%. So that tells us fewer sales are happening, prices are still holding. This is why some people feel like the market is strong and others feel like it's slowing down. Waverly West had the most detached home sales in March with 25, with the average sale price of $658,000, followed by West Kildonan and Scotia Heights area with 23 sales and the average price of just over $320,000. At the same time, when you look at prices across Winnipeg, Southwest is the highest price range, averaging over $620,000, Southeast by $535,000, and more affordable areas like the West and North are sitting around the mid 300s range. So within Winnipeg, you can really see how much things are very depending on area. But it's just not where people are buying right now. It's also starting to change what they're buying. Looking at condos and attached homes, there are a lot of buyers starting to shift their strategy. If you look at the attached homes, there were 109 sales, which is actually up compared to last year. The average price has moved up to about $393,000. So that segment has seen more activity and prices are still trending upwards. Now compared to condos, there are about 109 sales, so it's just slightly down year over year. And the average price has also increased to around $292,000. The prices are rising in both segments, and this is where it matters depending on your situation. If detached homes are starting to feel out of reach, this is where attached homes and condos start to become real alternatives, not just compromises. And for sellers, if you're in one of these segments and you're still benefiting from price growth, but buyers are becoming more selective, strategy matters more than ever. Once you start looking at different property types inside the city, it leads to the next question. What's happening just outside of the city? Areas like Headingley, West St. Paul, Oak Bank, and St. Andrew. This is where things start to shift a bit. In March, the average price came in at $601,000, which is actually higher than Winnipeg overall. There was 88 sales compared to about 114 last year. So activity is down, but pricing has stayed relatively steady. Homes are still selling around 99.5% of full list price, which tells you buyers are engaged, just a little more selective than they were a year ago. Even outside the city, we're seeing less activity but stable pricing. And if you're looking in Selkirk, Gimli, or the Interlake, I'll be breaking down that separately because those markets tend to move a little bit differently. You've been going back and forth on whether now is the right time to buy, sell, move up, or downsize. The biggest thing is to understand how these numbers apply to your situation. The strategy can look very different depending on your price range, your timing, and where you're planning on to move next. In the description below, I put a link to set up a time for a quick call, or if you're looking for a guide for downsizing, there's also a link below. If you're wondering what's happening in the Interlake area, you can watch that video next here.